Good evening, folks. Tonight we're going to talk about drugs. So, simply put, from a psychological perspective, psychoactive drugs are chemicals introduced into the body which alter your perceptions, your mood, and other elements of your conscious experience. So they change the way you perceive things, they change the way you think about things, they change the way you feel. But that's all well and great. However, we run the risk of dependence and addiction because they're so different from our ordinary state. We want it again and again and again, and that's where people run into trouble. So many psychoactive drugs can be harmful to the body. They're particularly dangerous when a person develops an addiction or becomes dependent on the substance. So some factors that are related to the addiction is tolerance, meaning you need more and more and more of the drug the more you take it. Withdrawal, meaning when you stop taking it, you experience sickness, headaches, things like that. Impact on your daily life. So if you're taking drugs all day, you're probably not going to be that useful of a person. And the physical and psychological dependence that comes with it. So dependence, it's a pretty big deal. A very, very, very large portion of our population in this country suffers from both physical and psychological dependence. So the main difference is that physical dependence, the body has been altered in ways that create cravings for the drug. It's physical. It's based in biology. Psychological dependence is when a person's resources for coping with daily life becomes withers as a drug becomes needed to relax, socialize, or sleep. We can't function without it, but it's not really physical, it's more psychological. We use it as a crutch, they say. So dependence on a substance or an activity. Tolerance is the need to use more to receive the desired effect. Withdrawal is the distress experienced when the high subsides, using more than intended, persistent failed attempts to regulate use, and much time spent preoccupied with the substance, obtaining it, and recovering. More important activities are usually reduced because you're doing drugs all the time. And you continue using it despite your health state deteriorating. So there's different types of drugs. Depressants are chemicals that reduce neural activities and other body functions, so it depresses activity. Downers, they're called them. Examples are alcohol, barbiturates, pills basically, and opiates. So the effects of alcohol use, for anybody that's not aware of this, you can't really function well. You have slow neural processing, reduced sympathetic nervous system activity, and slower thought and physical reaction. Reduced memory formation caused by disrupted REM sleep and reduced synapse formation, impaired self-control, impaired judgment, self-monitoring and inhibition, increased accidents and aggressions. Many of us have seen a drunk person and what they act like. Just picture them, and this is what that's describing. So chronic use, you get brain damage. Look at these two images. Look at this here, person with alcoholism, that says down here, versus someone without. Look at all these blank areas. Alcohol literally eats away at your brain if you drink too much, or if you're an alcoholic at least. Barbiturates, these are mainly tranquilizers, drugs that depress the central nervous system activity. These are your prescription drugs generally. Nembutal, Seconal, Amytal, I've never heard of any of those. Reducing anxiety and inducing sleep. Reducing memory, judgment, and concentration can lead to death if combined with alcohol. Someone in my hometown, one of my best friend's exes, recently died by taking too much Xanax and drinking at the same time. So barbiturates are a serious problem, especially with the increase of prescription drugs over the past 20 years. Opiates are highly addictive depressants, chemicals such as morphine, heroin, opium itself that are made from the opium poppy. So they depress central nervous activity, just like the other ones. It reduces anxiety and especially reduces pain. And high doses of opiates produce euphoria. That's mainly what heroin does. Opiates work at receptor sites for the body's natural pain reducers, so you're really feeling no pain, literally. I had a friend of a friend who described heroin use as orgasming 1 million times for 4 hours. So you could see how that would produce a euphoric state. Stimulants, on the other hand, are drugs with intensified neural activities and body function. These are your uppers. Some physical effects of stimulants are dilated pupil, increased breathing and heart rate, increased blood sugar, increased appetite, things like caffeine, nicotine, amphetamines, methamphetamines, cocaine, ecstasy. These are all stimulants. These are all uppers. They bring our moods to a more frantic state rather than the downers, which sort of make us slower and more lethargic and prone to tripping over ourselves. Caffeine, I'm guilty. I'm drinking it every day. It adds energy, disrupts sleep for 3 to 4 hours, which is why I drink coffee in the morning. It can lead to withdrawal symptoms if used daily. I need to drink it again around fourth period. You get headaches, irritability, fatigue, difficulty concentrating, depression. I haven't experienced any of those, but maybe if you're severely addicted to caffeine, you would. Nicotine. Nobody likes being around a smoker. The main effect of nicotine use is addiction. So it has all these stimulant effects, but the main effect that we're worried about is addiction. So why do people smoke? Why does this guy from Twilight, whose name I don't know, smoke? Starting to smoke, usually you're invited by peers and influenced by the culture and media. Continuing because you're positively reinforced by physically stimulating effects. Not stopping after regular use. Smokers have difficulty stopping because of withdrawal symptoms like insomnia, anxiety, distractibility, and irritability. Cocaine is another upper. Blocks reuptake and thus increases level at the synapse of dopamine, so it feels rewarding, serotonin, so it lifts your mood, and norepinephrine, which provides energy. Seems great, right? Effect on consciousness is euphoria for at least 45 minutes. What happens next, though? You crash into a state worse than before taking the drug. You're agitated, you're depressed, you may be in some pain, so you want more. You develop a tolerance over time, and withdrawal symptoms of cocaine get worse. You just want to take more just to feel normal. So when you started out taking that much, now you need to take that much to feel the same way. And cycles of overdose and withdrawal can sometimes bring convulsions, violence, heart attack, and death. Methamphetamines, commonly known as meth, triggers the sustained release of dopamine, sometimes leading to 8 hours of euphoria and energy. But after that wears off, you're irritable, you're an insomniac, you have seizures, hypertension, violence, depression. Meth addiction becomes all-consuming. We've all seen these images from 1998 to 2002, 4 years. Look at this woman. That's what meth does to you. So I know Walter White is kind of like a cultural hero, but he's in actuality a horrible, horrible person that is contributing to people turning from this to this. MDMA and ecstasy, synthetic stimulant, meaning it's made in a lab that increases dopamine and greatly increases serotonin. So you have euphoria, your central nervous system is stimulated, you may experience hallucinations, an artificial feeling of social connectedness and intimacy. You may see people touching each other and feeling like everything is okay in the world. However, once it wears off, short run, you might regret some of the behavior that you did. You get dehydrated, you overheat, high blood pressure. You make it past that, you might have damaged serotonin-producing neurons, causing permanently depressed mood. So too much ecstasy eats away at your brain. Your sleep gets disrupted, circadian rhythm as well, impaired memory, slowed thinking, and a suppressed immune system. Hallucinogens, LSD, lysergic acid diethylamide, and similar drugs, they interfere with serotonin transmission. So this causes hallucinations, images, and sensations that didn't come in through the senses. Your mind just makes them up. Marijuana, or now called cannabis, THC, binds with brain cannabinoid receptors. So we have receptors in our brains that are especially designed to receive the chemicals in cannabis. The effect on consciousness is it amplifies your sensation, disinhibits impulses, euphoric mood, lack of ability to sense satiety, otherwise known as the munchies. So once you get stoned, you have impaired motor coordination, perceptual ability, and reaction time. It accumulates in the body, increasing the effects of the next use. Over time, the brain shrinks in areas processing memory and emotion, and not to mention, if you smoke it, you get lung damage. So here's a little guide to psychoactive drugs. If you'd like to stop it and sort of see where all of these drugs kind of line up to one another, you can do so. However, as you can see, there was this period in the 70s and 80s where people were doing a lot of drugs. And it kind of leveled off and then went back up. But you could see, as of 2011, 26% of high school dropouts smoke. 6% of people with graduate degrees smoke. So people are doing a lot of drugs in this country. So what influences can lead to drug use? You could have biological influences. Maybe your grandparents' parents were predisposed to alcoholism or other drug use. Variations in neurotransmitter systems, so we each have a different tolerance to drugs initially. Maybe some of us are affected more than others. Psychological influences, maybe you have a lack of purpose, maybe you're stressed out, maybe you're depressed. There's also sociocultural influences in urban environment where drugs are prevalent. Cultural attitude towards drug use, or maybe your friends are just kind of peer pressuring you into it. So what can turn drug use into dependence? These are what we just talked about. Biological factors, dependence in relatives, thrill-seeking in childhood, genes related to alcohol sensitivity and dependence, and easily disrupted dopamine reward system. As for the psychological factors, seeking gratification, taking care of your depression, maybe you have some identity crisis, problems assessing risks and costs. Social influences, maybe media glorification in music and or movies, you see your friends doing it. So controversies related to addiction. Are substances inherently addictive and should they be avoided at all cost? I don't know, that's up for you. Up to you. Only 10 to 16% of people who try most drugs, even morphine and cocaine, become addicted. So most people don't become addicted. Turns out most people who try drugs try them once or twice, a couple times, and then that's it. Does recovery require therapy or require a 12-step program? I personally think it depends on the person. In general, recovery rates do not seem to differ much from people quitting on their own. Is the addiction concept applicable to repeated behaviors that do not involve ingesting chemicals? So are behaviors addictive too? That's something to think about. So labeling in this way can be seen as making excuses for misbehavior, such as gambling or sexual affairs. However, many of the dependence criteria are often met, and there may be a dopamine-based chemical process underlying some addictive behavioral patterns. For example, when I bite my fingernails, I get a dopamine release, so I'm addicted to that in some way. Much in the same way, when we behave in certain ways, we get response from our environment, whether from other people or whatever, and dopamine is released. So there is a case to be made that behavior can be addictive as well. All right, so there we go, kids. Don't do drugs.